person, please sign up on the clipboard in the back. Sorry, let me just check in with Amherst Media and see if they're ready to go. Thank you, Damien. All right, so I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:30. Since we have one remote participant, we'll do a roll call, not vote, but we'll do a roll call attendance. Irv.
Here.
Jennifer's here. Deb? Here. Sarah?
Here.
And Bridget?
Here.
Great. So let's see. Our first agenda item is public comment. So we have 10 pages of public comment emails that are posted on Board Docs, which is the website for a school committee. I have 5 voicemails. And Seth, would you mind terribly grabbing the clipboard for me? And I have probably people signed up to make public comment in person. We have a full agenda tonight, and tonight is the first opportunity for this committee, thank you, to discuss the Amherst budget. So I'm going to enforce policy BEDH, which limits the public comment period to 15 minutes total. This policy usually often isn't enforced, but I'm going to enforce it tonight so that the committee can get to our work of discussing and deliberating on the budget. We had a public budget hearing last week at which we prioritized hearing from the members of the public, but tonight I'm going to prioritize giving the committee an opportunity to speak. So that being said, let's start with our first public comment person, which is Ariel Templeton.
I'm Ariel Templeton. I am the band director at the elementary schools. I've said probably just about everything I can say already between last year's meetings and this year's meetings about the importance of our program. Honestly, it's pretty disheartening to be back in this position again this year. It's also a little disheartening that instrumental music is not specifically listed on the projections of restored cuts that we share tonight. I know we've been told that we are combined with specials on these projections, and that's great news, and thank you to the admin who clarified that. But we've always been listed separately on previous charts and documents when they refer to the cuts, so it'd be kind of nice to see our positions listed on the hopeful restoration of things. Ultimately, this is all about the kids, and we can't lose sight of that. I've always invited you all and admin to our concerts, and I know life is really busy and it's hard to make evening concerts. I understand that our program doesn't have the same high visibility that the regional bands have. However, those programs wouldn't function without a robust elementary program, which will be severely reduced with these proposed cuts. At point 9, we'll lose up to 24 lesson slots, which could result in us not having enough time to see 4th grade next year, and that's really concerning. I thought I'd let my students do most of the talking today since this is about them, and these cuts will directly impact them the most. Hopefully this recording will explain why I'm always here advocating for our program. Hearing these kids play their hearts out is what it's all about, and if it's okay, I'd like to play a little video of Wildwood last year in their spring concert. And this is just one of our 4 bands, so they're all equally awesome, but I could only pick one. I'll just let it get to the trumpet solo and then I'll turn it off. They worked really hard on that. So you get the idea. So I'm really proud of these kids. They work really hard, and they love what they do. So thank you so much for all you do to help our schools. And I have to run to the concert now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Laura Yvonne Steinman. And I'm also going to just say again, repeat that, or maybe I didn't say this earlier, we're going to limit each individual to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi again. As you folks probably know, I'm the art teacher at Wildwood. I also really love quotes. I'm going to start with a quote. Over 60 years ago, MLK Jr. said this: "In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structures of reality." So I wanted to just use that as a framework to show this is like a long weaving that a bunch of kids at Wildwood, I just took off the loom this afternoon. And the warp are the black strings, and that's the structure that like holds all the weaving together. And that's what makes all the other weaving possible. So if we looked at like the structure of our classrooms and our supports and our educators and just everyone in that way, I just wanted to show you what happens when that structure is broken and not supported. Oh, thank you. So over here, you can see over here, this part over here, the warp has been broken. And you can really, really see the difference in how the structure is in all the weaving. There's just, I mean, I can like put my hands like right through here. It's just not as strong. The yarns don't stay together as well. But just again, like a real actual like visualization of what happens when that foundational structure is not there. So I'm just asking everyone to really think about that and how important it is to really support a tier 3 in our budgets. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ruth Killow-Hill?
Hello, my name is Ruth Killow-Hill. I work at Fort River School, and I have 2 children who went through the schools here. I've been deeply grateful to be a member of the Fort River School community since 2012. Over the years, we have experienced multiple changes in leadership, both at our school and in our district. Throughout these transitions, our staff have remained committed to our students and families, providing support to each other. Having worked in 3 other districts before coming to Amherst, I can confidently say that our staff works tirelessly and consists of many of the finest educators in the state. We have also had 3 district programs, Comandantes, Building Blocks, and AIMS, more than any other elementary school in terms of number of programs. These programs serve not only our students from our school, but from those of other elementary schools and outside of our district. With the largest student population, second only to the high school, it is clear that maintaining a well-supported and smoothly running school benefits the entire district. This year has been the most challenging I've ever experienced. Just 3 days before the start of the school year, our assistant principal was reassigned to a new role, leaving our school without a key leadership. His leadership was vital to the well-functioning of our school, and as the only Latino member, he was also important in terms of our understanding of Comandantes. His deep understanding of the cultural curriculum of Comandantes, one of the program's core components, was invaluable. Latino families had built trust with him that they couldn't replicate. He also had previously worked in Building Blocks, giving him unique insight to the needs of the program. No clear explanation was provided to our community about this change, and we were left to navigate the loss and confusion of this unexpected decision. Our principal, who has always been dedicated to the safety and well-being of our students, families, and staff, took action in response to multiple incidents at our school, including the events of February 10th. Despite her efforts, she received little to no additional support. As a result, she is now on leave, further disrupting our leadership structure. This has left our school without consistent leadership at a time when we desperately need it. Fortunately, we have 2 now, currently, caring and committed administrators stepping in. They are doing their best to provide the leadership we need, so desperately need. However, they do not have the experience or knowledge of what this truly looks like. How can they? They've just started in their administrative roles. We're wondering why we don't have two experienced administrators, the ones that we started with, whom both the students and families know and trust. Lastly, I want to raise a critical question of what is the impact of having a fifth grade Common Institute teacher become an admin? He's a wonderful educator and kind and knows our school well. However, I understand that this teacher I understood this teacher wanted to support our school as a leader, to which I'm grateful, but this decision has not been explained, or it has an impact not only our current students, but also in the continuity and success of the program that has been integral to many of our students' academic and social development. In terms of the budget, I also would like to just say that please consider, as you make the decisions about the budget, that we need to continue having staff that currently face our students, both the commandantes and teachers. Please make that priority of other positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Annalise Cottrell. Next, we have Annalise Cottrell.
I'm Annalise Kittrell. I'm a parent of 2 children at Fort River Elementary. Today, many of us are here together in reflection, acknowledging the painful reality that unchecked bullying and harassment, whether of teachers, administrators, and members of our community, continues to thrive in the shadows of silence. The delay in addressing these incidents, particularly after an assault in our school, only serves to deepen the wounds and foster an environment where inaction becomes complicity. Dr. Z's own words, "The well-being of our school community is our highest priority, and we will not tolerate actions that compromise the security and respect that every member of this community deserves." Yet, a vague statement from our superintendent and a restriction from our community were issued nearly a month after the fact. It's still unclear that this was actually at Fort River. This is not enough to demonstrate a commitment to protecting those who dedicate themselves to shaping our future. In silence, we allow the cycle of harm to persist, and in inaction, we endorse its continuation. It's time to break that silence, to confront the issue head on, and to ensure that every member of this community is safe, empowered to stand up against bullying and harassment before it escalates to even this level. I'm opting to utilize the remainder of my time to be a moment of silence. Let this silence allow you all to feel a smidgen of the discomfort that inaction and lack of transparency from our district office has been for so many of us in this community. Let it be a call to action, a commitment to do better, and a reminder that we cannot, will not, and should not let this behavior go unchallenged anymore. Thank you.
Maria Torres. Maria Torres.
Hi, buenas noches. My name is Maria Torres. I'm a parent of an 11th grader, and I have 2 of my kids are in college, came through the schools. So here I go. Dear school committee members, for the last 8 years, I've served as a secretary at Fort River School, working alongside 4 principals, and 5 assistant principals. If you ask me now, how am I doing? I will say, aquí bien, which means here, fine. But the truth is, I'm exhausted, frustrated, and deeply concerned. And I'm not the only one. Schools should be the place of stability. Safe havens where students, staffs, and families feel supported. Every adult in this building is an educator, regardless of their job title. And we arrive each day with a shared purpose to welcome our students with warmth, meet their needs, and help them thrive. But right now, we're struggling to do that because we ourselves are not supported. As March of 2025, Fort River will undergo yet another leadership transition. 2 dedicated professionals will step into these roles, determined to do their best. But even the most committed leaders cannot succeed when they are placed in an unsustainable situation. Strong intentions are not enough when meaningful support is absent. This is not just an unfortunate coincidence. This is a pattern. What has Fort River lost 2 administrators in a single year? Where are we repeatedly put in this position where strong leaders leave, morale suffers, and staff members are left scrambling to hold everything together? Most importantly, why is nothing being done to stop this cycle? The daily challenges in our school take a toll on everyone, especially when support from the district leadership feels inconsistent or inadequate. Our administrators often feel unheard, unsupported, and at times, as they are walking on eggshells, afraid to speak up, or fear of indirect reprimand, rather than meaningful solutions. This kind of reactive leadership does not strengthen our schools, it weakens it. The greatest asset the district has is its people, the educators, staff, and administrators who dedicate themselves to these students day in and out. But when one of us struggles, the impact ripples across the entire school community. Right now at Fort River, those ripples are turning into waves. Without intervention, they will become fractures too deep into with no repair. I'm urging you to take time to step inside our schools, and not just for a meeting, not just for a brief check-in, but truly to see what is happening here. Spend time with our administrators, ask them how they're doing, ask them what they need, and most importantly, listen and then act. It is not just for River, it's about setting a precedent for how we value, support, and retain the people who make our schools work. If we continue to ignore the warning signs, we will continue to lose good leaders, good educators, and ultimately the trust of our community we serve. The time to act is now. The question is, will you?
Thank you. We've hit our 15 minutes, but I'm going to allow the last public comment who signed up, Angelica Bernal.
Hi, good evening. I'm here today as the mother of 2 elementary school students, one at Four Rivers Caminantes program and another in the ILC at Wildwood. And I want to urge you from both refraining from making cuts to budgets and to pass a budget that restores positions. Over the past few meetings, many of us have made the case for refraining from cuts. I want to make that case again, yet again, especially because I see what's coming. Our schools are in crisis. The Department of Education is being dismantled as we speak. This is a time when I ask for your courage, a courage that is severely lacking at the federal level and local level here with some of our elected officials and town manager. Let me put concretely what I ask for you to be courageous about. First and foremost, do not cut our paras. Time and again, when cuts are made, paras are on the chopping block. And I'm here to tell you once again that you cannot do this for many reasons. First is the impact on our special needs students. Our paras are one of the most valuable people in our children's lives. They're the ones that implement the IEPs. For my son and many others, this means the people that accompany them daily and make it possible for them to succeed in schools. Their paras help them navigate school physically and in every other way, communicate with peers, etc. They are indispensable. When I hear that you will submit to cuts and do so as you have in the middle school already by cutting paras, what I'm asking you to do is What I'm hearing is that you do not value fully the key role that they play. So my second reason for you is this: it's not cost effective. The devaluing of our paraprofessionals is reflected in the struggles they face year after year in their fight for a living wage. Cutting them is like trying to fix ocean water coming into a sinking ship by scooping the water with a teacup. It makes no financial sense. It also makes no legal sense. With each para that you cut, you are moving yourselves into non-compliance. Let me be more plain. If we need paras to accommodate our students, how can we do that without them? We cannot. And as a result, for many of us parents, we will be prepared to legally fight that non-compliance, which makes, therefore, for you, no legal or financial sense for any of us. 35 years ago today, 50 disability activists left their wheelchairs and mobility aids and crawled up the steps of the U.S. Capitol to urge the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I hope that you will be inspired by their actions, because today, more than ever, resistance and courage is necessary. You can be a model for how we move forward and push our elected officials to reform ways in which we have long ago failed to prioritize investments in our local public schools. Thank you for your time, and I also hope that everyone here and on Zoom will join us in celebrating our paraprofessionals on Paraprofessional Appreciation Day, April 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. If we have time at the end, I will play the public comment voicemails. But now we're going to go on to the next agenda item, which is the chair's update. So first of all, this coming Monday, March 24th, there will be a meeting of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means regarding the fiscal year 2026 budget. It's a hearing, and it's going to be focused on school funding. And I'm aware that the high school is going to be taking a school-wide field trip to greet the legislators as they enter the meeting. It's going to be at the UMass Campus Center Auditorium. You will also be able to watch the meeting virtually if you can't attend. If you just Google March 24th Ways and Means Committee, you'll find the link to be able to watch it virtually. The committee is co-chaired by our state senator, Joe Comerford, and our own Bridget Hines will be speaking at the invitation of Senator Comerford. So I encourage those who are able to attend or to view the live stream. Are any other committee members planning on attending? I won't be able to, but thank you, Deb.
I'll be there.
And Dr. Z will be there too. Great.
I am not able to, but I don't know if it's possible for me to give some remarks to one of my colleagues to, if you're going to be able to testify, or there's no testimony? Just Bridget?
Sarah, send me your thoughts and
Okay.
I'll see what I could weave in.
Okay, maybe probably very similar to what you're.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Deb.
On April 8th in Boston, there will be a public hearing that allows people to testify publicly, but this one is invitation only.
Invitation, the speakers are
The
by
speakers
invitation.
are invited and no one else.
Thank you. And now I want to make a comment about the Fort River situation. So as a school committee member and as a parent of a student who has spent over 10 years so far in this community, I want to say that it's our job as parents to model the behavior we want to see in our students, particularly when it comes to conflict resolution. When we feel upset or aggrieved by something or someone in the school community, even when it is deeply felt, we have an obligation to treat others with respect and in a civil manner. I am aware there was an incident at Fort River last month in which 2 parents were verbally and physically aggressive to another parent in the school lobby, and I want to say that that is not okay. Students, parents, and visitors to all of our elementary schools should always find an environment free of harassment and bullying. And I want to say to anyone who thinks it's okay to behave in an aggressive and harassing way to other parents, I want to point out Fort River's stated values of holding high expectations for students and adults and unconditional respect and acceptance for all individuals. That is it for the chair's update. Do school committee members have any announcements or any updates?
The elementary school building committee met. Everything's proceeding as planned, even given the fact that there was a 2-month delay in getting this project started. There's parts of the project that need to get shifted a little later, but not the part that involves the moving in and starting the school year. So we anticipate being able to start the school year on time at Fort River in the fall of 2026. Then I would like to make not a statement. I would just like to say that the Amherst Town Council is meeting on Monday at 6:30. And the fourth agenda item is a proposal to change the financial guidelines from the town council to the town manager, who will be drafting the entire town budget for this upcoming fiscal year, the year that we're working on right now, the year that you're advocating for right now. So, as you probably all know, but it bears repeating, that the part of the entire budget that is given to the different pieces, that is recommended by the town manager to the town council, and that will be done in May. And the final decision will be during that month. There will be hearings, but the part that the town manager builds his budget on are the financial guidelines that go through finance committee and then the town council. And that has happened already. That happens in November. So in the sense that budgeting is ongoing, advocacy is also an ongoing issue. There is this 11th hour attempt by a bold member of the town council to change what's going forward. And I hope you'll consider showing up for that action. I'm excited and pleased and moved that we're seeing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Bridget.
Sarah, Marshall, and I attended the JCPC meeting this week, and the school did a presentation on some of the elementary school needs. We're asking for new Chromebooks for the elementary school, for electric school buses, and we've asked for some upfront money on the lease that would save the operating budgets year over year. And then new special ed vans. I was pretty shocked to hear that one of the vans was a 2010 with 230,000 miles on it, and that the other two were close in line behind that. So we're asking the town for some of those capital needs, some of which will help save a little in our operating budget. And then I just reiterate, whatever budget we pass tonight, that's our determination about the best job we can do for the school children in a way that we think might stand a chance at town council, but we're really going to have to press hard. I listened to the finance committee meeting today, and there isn't a lot of sympathy at town hall for the schools right now, frankly, and we need to try and help people understand what the needs are, because maybe our communication hasn't been quite as robust as it could be. I'm going to keep trying, but I'd say that folks who know directly from their own experience, please join us in keeping trying as well.
Bridget, you forgot to add that we also asked for the 6th grade move.
Yes,
Additional
and
funding.
Very importantly, money for the 6th grade move as part of the process of the new school building next year. Yeah.
Can I add something
Sure.
to that? You said, just to be clear, JCPC hasn't yet asked anything of the town. We are considering all the requests from different departments, and this committee will make a recommendation, a set of recommended capital expenses to the town manager, and he will decide what to include to submit to council. So there are several steps to go.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the superintendent's update.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and just start off and go off. Well, of course, usually we start with our district priorities, and they stay the same: student safety and well-being, healing and stabilization of the district, and data and accountability for equity. The chair asked this evening, and we agreed from the last time to give an update into Fort River. And I'm going to start off by stating that from the time I was informed, and I think that was late afternoon on the 10th, I followed my usual protocol, informing and following up with legal counsel around what is it that we can do, especially being new to the district and understanding the district has some history. Immediately that day, I also asked the principal to collect statements and provide those statements to myself so that I could review them with legal counsel. Where we are at currently as a district is under the guidance, there is specific information that I cannot share, but what I can say, and which I have said publicly to everyone, is that we have been working closely with Amherst PD. We've even worked with the Sheriff's Department. We've issued to the school committee, and I think I'm gonna say as much as I can, we've issued our no trespass orders. We have also immediately right after those following days, I think I guided the principal into filing or supplemental police report so that the school district had a police report on record. Where we also are at is, I believe there's an upcoming hearing. Our legal counsel has guided us that we need to be present, so we're working with Amherst PD to determine if we should be present and if we can be present to speak on behalf of the school district. I cannot go into any further specific details because I need to be mindful of the legal ramifications for the school district. But what I will say is that I stand by my word that student safety comes first, staff safety comes first, and we do not tolerate aggressive bullying from anyone at the district, in the district schools, towards anyone at our campuses. I will also say that I met with all members involved except for 2 individuals who chose not to meet with me. And so we have been working together to make sure that everything is brought up to date and that Fort River can remain safe. That's as deep as I am able to say publicly, because I did ask what I can and cannot say. What I will say too is that a lot of times individuals don't understand the role that a superintendent, a principal, or any leader has to play when it comes to an organization. And not because things are not stated in a specific manner does not mean that we are not working diligently to get things done. We have to follow processes. There are processes that as a leader, we have to follow. And when we are guided, we have to follow those steps to ensure that we can continue to keep the district and students and families safe. I can guarantee the school committee that I have followed all of the steps. I have worked closely with every law enforcement agency. I have worked closely with our legal counsel to make sure that Fort River is within compliance and we are doing what we need to do to keep parents when they come into that campus safe, to keep our staff safe. Our principal did submit for leave. As soon as I found out through the assistant principal, we were able to come up with an interim plan. It took us some time because there's some parts that needed to be put into place. We have been working diligently, and I have to say, I said it today publicly. I said it to her in our leadership meeting. I said it to her yesterday, and I will continue to say it to her. I am very, very honored and humbled by Tara Luce. Tara Luce stepped in October to become our interim assistant principal. She has stepped up to become our interim principal, and she is working diligently. She is also one of our senior principals who she worked very closely with, and who for me is one of our, I have very great leaders in the district, but one of our top leaders in the district has agreed to be her mentor in this situation. She also was able to work, and we had to sit down and balance what are we looking at in terms of availability of supports and what would be best for Fort River. I think that there's a lot of change, and I've learned the history as I come in, and I'm still learning the history of what's happening repeatedly in terms of the turnover in Fort River leadership and the shifts and change. And to me, it's often like it's worse than the bell curve. It's worse than the sinus rhythm. And so trying to stabilize that, we did have, and she did express the concerns about pulling from the Fort River well and what that impact would be. But we also felt like during this time that it would better support Fort River to have someone who is internal step in and support the leadership. We are also bringing in hopefully, we asked to bring in a seasoned leader at least 2 to 3 days a week to support the leadership team so that as they themselves are walking into leadership, there can be an additional leader who will be in there to provide them with that support. So if they need to, for any reason, need to take a personal day or they just need support in running the building, that is possible. We are working that out to find that individual. We had a very positive conversation with that person yesterday, and I'm hoping that they confirm and we're able to say by Monday who that additional person would be to support the two leaders that are there. So right now, for sure, we have Tara Luce as our interim principal, and we have, I'm going to say it right, Tim Austin as our interim assistant principal, and we're working on a seasoned leader to come in to support them at least 3 days a week and be a part of that balanced leadership team. She also has her mentor in Mr. Derek Shea, who is supporting her. And so the entire leadership team has been behind her, and she can text, call, and we show up whenever we need to. So any additional supports, we're definitely putting in place. One of the things that I've also spoken to her about is that in terms of this legal matter, I will keep her abreast, but I will take the lead. And so I am intervening on behalf of the school in the full legal matter moving forward. So that includes working with the sheriff's office. We know she's having issues. It's okay. So it's on board docs in case anyone needs to see it. But we need to get it up before the budget piece, for the budget piece. Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We'll have our kindergarten, Welcome to Kindergarten Families meeting for any student entering kindergarten in Amherst Elementary Schools, and that'll be at Cracker Farm Elementary. So we will be sending that out, but that's Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. And then we also have our Amherst calendars where all of our schools, our three schools, thank you, our three schools have some events coming up. We have some as far out as into the month of April. And I know, for example, this evening there was, I think it was the Commandant's night. It got postponed, okay. So that was postponed to next week, so that's not up here, on here, so we will definitely update this so that it can go out. And that's my update for this evening because we really want to get into the budget discussion. So thank you. Sarah had a question.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yes. Two questions about the incident at Fort River, and maybe you can answer, maybe you can't. But you referred to a hearing. Is that a court hearing? What kind of hearing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Second of all, I don't know how many people or if any students witnessed this incident, but I can imagine it was traumatic for them. So has there been any kind of support for the students or even the educators, aside from getting all the facts and, you know, trespassing
the initial report, when the initial reports came in, there were no reports of student witnesses. When myself and the team went back and we questioned as in asked everyone who was identified as a witness what they observed, what happened. We went back to the closest classrooms to determine if students were in the hallway, if they witnessed. There was no specific student that was pointed out as. The concern is that it happened within reach that I am assuming that with classroom doors and because they're active areas, like schools are active walkways, children move throughout, that there are children who may have observed the incident, but we are not. It has not been brought to my attention a specific student. But for me, just the possibility of students being able to witness it puts it in a different light. And so that's why we've, like I said, invoked legal counsel. We've been working through Amherst PD. We made sure that we have all those things in place. But specifically, I have not been told of any student who has specifically witnessed the incident, no.
But she didn't respond to your question.
Deb, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
But she didn't respond to the question.
We're not doing public comment right now.
So, thank you for that update. I don't know if now is the time to ask this, so I'll maybe perhaps ask it going forward. From some of the emails that we've gotten to, it seems like there's more. It seems like there was an incident, but it seems like it's more than just an incident. And so I would ask for an update on whether or not there were intervening things going between when the no trespass order was issued and when the initial incident took place, and if there's anything subsequent going on. I know there's a legal part, but also this is relevant.
There's a history. There's a history with the individuals that are involved, and the districts and the schools. There is a history with, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
politically correctly answer this the best way I can. There is a history of written, verbal interactions with the individuals that are there. Some that have happened in the community at community events, not specifically, to my knowledge, at the school, but some that have happened at the community events. Some that has happened, I'm going to say, in PGO emails. Some that have happened in various ways that the tone is not a welcoming and or a pleasant tone. It's not a tone that most individuals welcome in their emails or welcome in the conversation. So to me, what ended up happening is that it escalated to a point that it should not have, because individuals did not have the level of self-control that we expect adults to have. I firmly believe, and it is my hope, that our legal system steps in and does what needs to be done. I also firmly believe, and I hope, that we need to establish a stronger code of conduct for how individuals behave when they come to our campuses. I also know, in speaking with especially Amherst PD, that when we call them, and this shifts my mindset. Again, this is my first year here, but I am from a school district where if parents act out of line on campus, we call the police department and we ask them to be removed from our campuses. And so that may not have been the initial thought in that moment, because there's a lot of things that trigger and happen. There's things that happened prior to that incident which affected the staff, which the staff was also dealing with. So there's more than one thing that occurred that day. One that occurred with staff members that should not that escalated out of hand, and then occurred with a parent who just came to be a parent at the school. What is occurring is that, just like this evening, we need for individuals to understand that there are processes, there are things that occur, and sometimes because we are not looking at what we are perceiving to be normal or okay behavior, we are able to come off as aggressive to others, right? And it's not okay. It's not okay to cross those boundaries. It's not okay to do those things. We need to have a level of self-control as adults. And we, like Jennifer said, we become the examples for the children. It was never reported to me that children were present. But what I do know is that children were in the vicinity because the classrooms had students in it. When I asked if the students in the classrooms heard or if the adults in the classrooms heard, no one was able to corroborate that, yes, they know for sure anyone heard. But again, a school has active walkways. I also will say, yes, there are other things that occurred, but not just at Fort River. There are other schools that are not, that this actual thing did not occur to, that also have brought things to my attention. The APEA has brought stuff to my attention around different staff members at other buildings. So this is not a, for me, this is not a one, as the superintendent, and not just the superintendent of Amherst, the superintendents of Amherst and the region. This is a multi-district incident, one that has right now that's further moving in legal proceedings, but also another district and the union has brought things to my attention around not just Fort River, but our middle school and our high school that they also would like me to look into. So things are moving, and you're right. From what you see, because you sit on Amherst and you sit in the region, so from what you see, there are things that are coming forward, and we are working on them.
I had a second question.
Sure.
I know that was
Go ahead.
a long one, but it's important. So Fort River's my home. I was in there for a ridiculous number of years, from Sam up through Katie, Mars, Maggie, whoever you want to.
Can you get closer to your mic?
Yeah. So
Thank you.
when, at the time, the principal moved the pickup from the front of the building around to the back, that was a big deal for me. This was my community. This is the place where I got the phone call that, hey, your kid just got stung by a bee. And I'm like, I'm on my way. And she's like, no, we're fine. And we got this. But schools have always been an extension of my home. So what I'm hearing is, yes, thank you very much for integrating all of this in terms of a legal action and steps going forward to prevent it from happening in general for the future. But what I'm asking is, the community is feeling really raw and really vulnerable and really afraid and really traumatized. You know, the children, for sure, that's your first priority, but, you know, taking care of the caretakers is important too. So I'm asking if there's something that we can do as a district to support and heal the community that is feeling very off balance and vulnerable and hurt at the moment. And again, maybe not a question for right now, but I think that's important.
I don't disagree. And I think even in our last conversation, when I was at the campus and I met with Tara, some of the things I assumed the staff had known, they didn't know.
Okay.
I thought that they knew about like the no trespass and all of those things. They didn't. So I shared with her, like, this is what you could share. And she did. I think she shared either that afternoon or the next morning. There is a lot that is going through Fort River,
Yeah.
and they do need a lot of support. What that looks like, I think it's going to take Fort River to come together and kind of help build that plan. Because I spoke to 2 teachers that said they've been through this time and time again. So it didn't feel like they've been through this change of leadership. They've been through this. I walked the campus today and I asked different individuals, like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And we made note of what they said. It's very sad because I told them next to the middle school, according to what I've learned, Fort River has gone through just as much turnover as the middle school. So they deserve stabilization of leadership. I also know that I respect the fact that everyone is a human being and needs to take the time to take and support themselves. And it's not easy leading a school. So I feel like we do need to do something to support them. And circling back, working with Tara, Tim, and possibly a few of the teacher leaders to determine what that would be and what that would look like is not far-fetched. It's something that should be done soon.
I have a question. This may be another question you can't answer. Do the no trespass orders apply only to the Fort River campus, or do they apply to other district property?
Fort River.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? All right, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is approving minutes. I hope folks have had a chance to look at the February minutes. Does anyone, Sarah, go ahead. Of course.
Of course. 2 things, just so everything's numbered. So under the where brim is first mentioned,
Yep.
there's 2 black square bullets, and it just says Wildwood. So it was maybe to be clear, make that bullet clearer. I think
Sorry,
it
hang on
could
one
say
second.
that at Wildwood, it is used to communicate amongst staff, because I think that's
Yes.
what happened.
Thank you. Yep, I'll do that.
All right, and then for the school choice hearing, all the way at the bottom, I mean, it's a public hearing. It's an opportunity to hear from the public. No one from the public made any comment about school choice, but we need to note that.
Okay.
It wasn't, the purpose of the hearing is not for the committee to discuss school choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions or comments about the minutes? Then I move that we approve the February 25th, 2025 minutes as amended.
Second?
Any further discussion? Irv, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jennifer votes yes. Deb?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Bridget?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is warrants. We have 5 warrants that are attached to board docs that people can view. The next item is gifts. Would anyone like to read the gifts?
Sure, I
Go
can
ahead,
read
Sarah.
them. All right. So they are presented to us by the district treasurer, Jill Berry. She lists the following donations from Martha Olver, number 996947 and 996969. A gift of $20 to Crocker Farm to support the principal's discretionary fund. Second, from the Roger Wallace Excellence in Teaching Award Foundation, number 1028, a gift of $1,000 to the Crocker Farm Elementary School social justice materials / events, and detail is provided in an attached letter. And thirdly, a donation from Kids in Need Foundation / Burger King Foundation, a gift estimated at $500 to Wildwood Elementary. Supply A teacher kits as attached letter and free shipping detail. So that totals cash total of $1,020 and estimated, I guess, value, goods valued at $500.
Thank you. I have a question, which I'm not sure if Dr. Z you can answer, but the letter on the next page from the Roger Wallace Foundation indicates that $1,000 would be gifted, $1,000 each to Fort River Wildwood and Crocker Farm, and $1,000 each to Fort River Wildwood and Crocker Farm. But the table only indicates $1,000 to Crocker Farm. Do we think that's an oversight?
So I'm guessing that she only received, because the check number is listed,
Okay.
that she's only received the one check.
Okay.
I will double check where the other checks are.
Okay, so
but she lists the check number next to what she actually received.
Great, thank you. So I'll take that as a motion from Sarah to accept the gifts, and I second. Any discussion or questions? Irv, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jennifer votes yes. Deb?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And Bridget?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Chair, excuse me, may I
Yes.
make a comment about another gift?
Sure.
We've been told, right, I think we've been told that we are receiving, and it's in our budget, that Amherst College has given funds to the town, some of which will be passed to us, and that's wonderful. Since the gift was made to the town, perhaps they're the ones that have had to formally accept the gift, but I would like this committee at some point to thank Amherst College for that support. I think it's $125,000 a year for the next 3 years, maybe? I'm not sure, but at least $125,000 for this year.
Okay, thank you. I'll add that on a future agenda. So our next agenda item is Wildwood, discussion of school culture at Wildwood Elementary.
So thank you to Allison for making this presentation this evening. I think this conversation started when we originally had the first conversation around the bullying and the data that went out. And from that it stemmed that we should have each school come and present like how they use the platforms, how it works for them. And so Allison is here this evening to graciously talk about Wildwood Elementary and their culture and in terms of, creating behaviors, climate, and behavioral supports. So thank you, Allison.
Thank you. I want to first let you know that Diane was here, but there's a concert at the high school, and her son is performing right now. So that I'm wishing for him to have a good night. And I also don't want to ignore that it's been a very emotional time up to this point, and I want to gush about Wildwood, but it does feel a little off the mood. So I just don't want to move forward without just honoring that our sister school is having a hard time, and we are certainly in camaraderie with them. I care deeply with Tammy Sullivan Daly, and I just want to honor that, and I don't want my pride in where we are in Wildwood to seem like I'm not feeling for them. So I want to start off with how when I first came to Wildwood, I was looking for a way to get out of New Hampshire. A certain president had just gotten elected, and I knew that I didn't want to raise my son there any longer. And I was looking for a more diverse community, and I met this really wonderful man named Nick Yaffe, and he created a school that I was very inspired by. And so I wanted my son to go to school there, so that's what we did. And then all of a sudden, they needed a teacher. And I was fortunate enough to get the job as a 5th grade teacher in 2017. They needed an assistant principal the year later. I have my license, so I went for that. And then I started learning from Nick how to build a culture that felt good for people to work in, for students to be in, for families to be a part of. And so I just want to honor that that's where I feel the intentional space that I learned from him is something that I'm very dedicated to maintaining and building upon. And so this goes for years. So from before I came in, the district started to do the PBIS work. You heard Derek Shea talk to that. You heard him speak to the values. At Fort River, it's the love values. At Crocker Farm, it's the care values. At Wildwood, it's our STAR values. And this is all a part of how the district supported elementary schools. We all do Second Step. That's our curriculum. We also supplement it with Oveus, which is some other resources to help support the social emotional development. I'm pretty sure we all do assemblies, our way to reinforce our values, to reinforce camaraderie and support. We are very dedicated to circles. Circles are a very important effort to create commonality between people. I might see myself as different from you, but when I'm in a circle, I get to share my experience, and you say, well, I have a similar experience, and all of a sudden our differences start to melt away. We also have dedicated a lot of resources to making sure the majority of our teachers have been trained in project-based learning. Project-based learning is a way to help students feel agency in the curriculum. And we are very dedicated to making sure that children have 2 to 3 experiences every year of project-based learning that reflects who they are, who they want to be, who they are proud of in themselves as they develop their identity and in their families. In the past 2 years, we have done student surveys as a way to understand if the efforts that we are making to shift culture and build culture are connecting. When we also, the alternative learning program at the high school, we have high school students come over at recess and help out at recess, and the children in kindergarten, 1st, 4th, and 5th, they get to connect with that. Our reinforcement system's always trying to think of ways to build up and acknowledge children in positive ways. And welcoming teaching partners. We make sure that every single classroom has welcoming teachers so that all children are feeling held as they come off the bus and they're being greeted in the building. That to me is the #1 way that we are supporting our children and our staff to create a community that feels safe and welcoming. So that effort, this was a slide that Diane would speak to because she was a part of this effort when research from Tobin and Vincent was used. This is a slide from the original training. And the district was learning about disproportionality, the idea that we have to be very direct in making sure that our Black and brown students are treated fairly and that we are not using our discipline procedures to overly correct and punish. And how do we do that? We have to make sure that we have systems in place to acknowledge positive behaviors, that we have consistent consequences, that we are using data to inform that effort. So this is helping you kind of see the history of that and the training that the district did before I even got here. So we are very committed to using the systems in an equitable manner to guide our work from week to week even. So everybody uses DESA. I'm pretty sure all the schools use that. It's a social emotional tool where teachers share their feedback on where they feel the social emotional growth is of each child. And we use that to help tailor the curriculum that the counselors are using with the children. We use the educator's handbook to collect antecedent behavior consequence data. Consequence is not punishment. It's just the action that happens after a behavior. It's something behavior therapists use. And that data is reviewed weekly because we want to make sure that the behaviors that somebody might be experiencing, that they are decreasing. So we have the therapeutic staff, counseling staff, and administrative staff. We look at that data weekly. And we also use that data to direct our resources, so we know which classrooms might need support, which children might need support, which families might need support. We are very systematic in how we approach bullying concerns. If there is any concern that is brought forward, we are very clear with making sure that children and families are spoken to first. We make sure that any staff member who works with those children are informed immediately, and we put in place a month-long process to make sure the children are being checked in on daily, weekly by the counselor, daily by a mentor, and I check with the families on a weekly to bi-weekly basis. And in doing that, we have been quite successful in making sure that children are able to get to a restorative space. We do not ever ask children to have a restorative conversation if all members are not ready for that. But we do look for opportunities to do that type of work. It's very central in helping our communities heal. And then we also rely heavily on our leadership teams to help us make sure that we are in a shared leadership model. If you have leadership change, Wildwood has in the past 2 years when I came on, we want to make sure that our staff are empowered. We don't want there to be upheaval. We want to make sure that we have a system that can be sustainable. And unfortunately, our paid leadership teams, that money was eliminated in the last budget. So we did our best to compensate with the professional development structure that helped people be able to meet in leadership teams during our faculty meetings. We have community reflection through circles. The staff use circles as well as children. And then we make sure that when the district hosts a training session, for example, we did Welcoming Schools this past March 7th, in preventing bias-based bullying. That's not a one and done. We had the trainers had people put sticky notes up. What is something that you're doing now? What's something that you'd like to do tomorrow? What's something you'd like to do by the end of the year? So my commitment is that that's not just something that you look at and say, oh, that's nice. I take that information, I compile it into a table so that everybody knows in a transparent way, these are the 3 things that our community said needs to happen today, and then the next 3 things that need to happen by the end of the year. So that will guide the things that we're working on as a school-wide effort going forward. So in my humble opinion, I think that we've created a culture that really supports children. We use the tools that the district has provided. Educator's Handbook is a tool. DESA is a tool. We are using those tools to make sure that we are not using anecdotal information to use resources, and I think that will be something that serves us as we look towards combining schools in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Are there school committee questions for Allison? Sarah?
How would you characterize, excuse me, the culture? I know what you're aiming for. Do you think these assessments of students, that they feel welcome, that they feel safe, that they feel supported? Do they feel
Yes.
that it's...
So we, in the surveys, we share with the students on a 5-point scale, 1 through 5. And regularly, the survey results are in the 4s and 5s for feelings of belonging. That's what we focus on. I think that Wildwood is known for that. It's really something that I feel is a part of our reputation, and not just for the students, but for the staff as well.
Deb?
Thanks for this, Allison. Going back to that slide, the Tobin and Vincent slide, where you had some nice data, because I'm a data nerd. If you could speak a little bit to what that graph represents, and if there's any, I'm sure you have more than you presented
So
us.
the slide, the larger slide, is from Tobin and Vincent 2011.
Oh, okay, so that's
I
not.
took that little sliver right there.
Yeah.
it's just an example of the EH data.
Okay.
So in July, there is no incidence, so that's why it's 0. And then you have a higher amount at the beginning of the year, and you want to see a downward trend as the year goes on.
And this is
That's the
what,
actual
that's your
trend.
actual data from last year,
No, from this year.
from this year? Okay.
Yeah.
And you monitor
We
this,
monitor weekly.
and you monitor the different, more than just what you've presented, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no, we have, there's a number of categories that we look at, and we have a team of people who are looking at exactly what are the supports in place for children who are struggling the most in that time period. Because you have to remember, if a child is going through a divorce, it's not about us, you know, so sometimes you just see an uptick in behavior, and that's where we want to make sure we're guiding the resources that are available to that child at that time to help them get through an upheaval that might be happening in their lives. So that's an example of using EH, because that child might have a struggle in the lunchroom, they might have a struggle in this other area, and so a classroom teacher might not be always aware of that, and so EH collects data from around the building, and that's how we're able to use it effectively.
Thank you.
Bridget.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I definitely know my son was in kindergarten with Nick Yaffe, and so I remember that energy and that feeling, everything from like the multicultural festival to the read alouds, and really that sense of community. One question I did have about the disproportionality is, how do you track data within the school, and do you differentiate, like, oh, in these spaces or these places we see more of X or Y? Like, how do you make sure kids are being treated equitably outside of using practices that are shown to lean more towards equity?
So the EH categorizes things. It's also based off of different settings, different, like children who might have different needs. So we can see all that very easily. That doesn't require any work. So when you're talking about trying to make sure children are treated equitably, in my experience, the most inequitable thing is anecdotal information. And so when you use tools inappropriately and just use them to report occasional things, that's when you start to see disproportionality result. When you use something to consistently look at things, I see that we understand how things are more related to the actual events that are happening for people. If there's ever a moment that we might think, oh, this is looking like a situation in which a teacher might need more support, then we can guide those resources in that way. Because when you think about how I think that a lot of times unfair treatment spreads in silence. And so if we have an expectation that when you're managing behavior and you're needing some supports and you're using this tool, if you're not using the tool, it makes me question what's going on. So the expectation is that you use the tool to document behaviors that need support, and then we can make sure that we're doing our best by the children in the classroom.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Allison, for coming and presenting for us. Say thank you to Diane for us,
Thank
too.
you, Allison.
Thank you. All right, our next agenda item is discussion of fiscal 26 fees. Hi, Shannon. I think we can bring up, which one, do you want to look at preschool first? Or,
I was going to start on
Start-
the memo
let's
and
start with
then
the memo?
go to the.
okay, let's start with the memo, if we could.
Okay. The first thing I wanted to talk on here was the musical instrument rental.
Can-
We were looking to increase that for the school year by $2 and for the summer by $1. And because there was a request at the regional meeting for reduced fees, I put that on here for the music instrumental rentals as well. I guess I should have started by every year we look at these and we should increase them accordingly. And then for the school meal prices, we're looking to increase them by 10 cents. That's the maximum we're allowed to increase per year by law. And while that lunch is currently free, we still want to keep up if for some reason it comes it ends up not being free any longer, we want to ensure that the costs keeps up with inflation. And then we have an increase for our adult lunch to $5, so it's an increase of $1.50. The preschool we wanted to increase, and you could show the other sliding scale for this, from $7 to $8. And I met with Elizabeth Burns at the preschool for this. The so the background to this, a little bit of information is Northampton currently charges $9 an hour for FY25, and for 26 they're moving to $10 an hour. So the full fee, if we were to have a student attend and paid the full fee and didn't reach anywhere on this sliding scale, at Northampton is 8,400. But for us at $8, it's 67.20. And another comparison was Hadley. They're at approximately $8.67, and their full fee is $7,288. So I wanted to share that information so that you know where we are in comparison, and we're still the least expensive in our area. The fees for the preschool go into a revolving fund, and we do use that to support some of the positions at the preschool level. So Elizabeth and I both felt that this was an appropriate increase. And there is some urgency to have this approved so that people that are interested in registering their students that want to attend this program, she can give out what that fee is. And she's had a family, I guess, gone elsewhere because we didn't have this just yet. So there's urgency to hopefully vote on this part tonight. I do want to just know, in case you aren't aware, that if a student is in the preschool program and for special needs, that student does not have to pay. That is free. So this is for not non-special needs, and then depending on where your income falls and family, it places you on that sliding scale. And I guess I will say, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Sarah, go ahead.
Yes. So I'm looking at the memo that lists the various fees, including preschool. And I think that at least the motion, if not the table, I don't know that you need to revise the table, should make it clear that what is being proposed and presumably, well, we'll see, voted on, is a maximum hourly rate of $8 per hour. But what any family actually pays, one needs to look to this second schedule. Okay, I'm afraid that if we just say the fee is $8 an hour, and that's in the motion, it just sounds like this doesn't exist. So I think that the motion ought to make some reference to the fact that the actual fee depends on income level and the size of the family.
So the $8 an hour is used to calculate those prices. So that's what we typically vote on. I would say if there is, if it needs to be voted with some additional language, that we add that in on the fly here if we plan to move it forward.
I think that's fine to add it on the fly. I have a question on the memo. So an increase from $7 an hour to $8 an hour, it's $1 an hour, obviously an increase. And I hear you saying, Shannon, that $8 an hour is still lower than Northampton and Hadley, but a 14% increase feels like a lot. Given that people's incomes don't, go up most of the time by that much. And are you saying that you and Elizabeth came to this decision based on the market, based on what you saw in our neighboring towns? Did you consider $7.50?
We did. That was where we initially started. But then based on where the other towns were and still being under, we thought it was still appropriate. And Elizabeth did say she felt that the families that do attend, that this would still be doable for the current population.
Okay, Deb.
Could you help me understand a little bit more? I mean, I understand the $8 an hour, but I don't really understand. I mean, and I understand in the preschool program, the second sheet here, the chart. I mean, I understand columns A, it's B and C that I don't quite. I mean, I get how you calculate the hours by multiplying the hourly rate. It's that column C I'm not clear on.
So to calculate so if we start at the max and then work our way back. So to calculate that, we do $8 an hour times 24 hours times 35 weeks, and that's where we get the 6,720. And then based on the sliding scale, it's whether you pay 10% or 18%, 25%, 50%, 75% of that total fee.
Okay, so that annual T part that's a little bit cut off, that's 35 times 8 times however many hours per week.
The annual tuition?
Yeah, the annual tuition.
Yeah, so for instance, the total is 6,720 if somebody was to pay 100%. If somebody's in the 26 to 35% range, they would only pay 10% of the 6,720.
Okay. I know this is, can I?
Sure, go ahead.
I know this says it's recommended by the Department of Early Education and Care, but I'm having a hard time with some of the costs for the lower percentiles. It just seems like a lot to me for somebody who's, you know, for a family of two, for instance, whose maximum annual salary is $37,000 per year. It just seems like $672, the $672 they don't have. So am I reading it wrong? No.
Are you reading it as monthly? Because I don't think it's six.
The annual tuition.
It's annual.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
like $67 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just, it just seems like.
So what would your recommendation be?
Universal free preschool? Can we reduce those bottom 3 tiers to about 50 cents an hour? That would be my recommendation.
Deb, is
thinking.
that a motion, or do you make a
Well, no,
friendly?
it's not a motion. I don't know.
Sarah,
It's an option.
yeah.
I'm requesting feedback on that thought.
I would say, gosh, I wouldn't want to just vote that without
Yeah.
going
Okay.
through the numbers, because we have to pay the teachers, right? So
This
if we're,
doesn't-
we pay the teachers, right? We pay the staff. So if there's less, and I don't know if it's affordable or not affordable, but it obviously influences the amount of funding that would be taken in. So I would want Shannon at least to have a chance to see what does that mean? It means more money from our budget, I assume, right? So, which we're already, so it would have to be recalculated.
I will also say that in working with Elizabeth and Shannon on this, is that when a family is unable to pay, we're not putting children out. We're not telling them they can't return. That's not what we're doing. Since I've come in here, I know we know of families who have had difficulties paying. And I'm telling you, Elizabeth and the team have worked with those families in ways where, I mean, for me, I don't even, the scale slides further. And so I say that to say that I understand the concern. I greatly do. But I do know that the Amherst Early Education Center, once they take your child, they don't take and put your child out, not for payment, not for behavior. They work with the children. So I hear the concerns, but I will also tell you that I know of situations where there are families who are unable to, who have not been able to, and we're not saying your child goes out. That's not what happens.
Bridget.
This reminds me of the sports discussion, and I really feel like those bottom two tiers of income, if you're under a certain percentage, I don't know if we're looking at 200% or 300% of the poverty line there, that there shouldn't be any charge, and that frankly, I think at the higher end, people can pay more. I can tell you that I had a child who went to preschool, and it cost me a lot more than there at the higher end, and he didn't go 24 hours a week, you know, so I think there's room, you know, and I'm just middle income, but there's a lot of people in the community who aren't, and who could pay more, and there's a desperate need for childcare now, so people will come up with the funds, I think. I just want to sort of balance the scales a little bit, and also like not short sight our program. I talked to someone who works as a school finance administrator in another town and said that their preschool is a revenue builder for their district. So I'm not suggesting that. I think it's good to have childcare that's affordable for everyone, but I do think there's room to grow at the top.
So I would like to propose, we do have our final vote already posted on board docs for the 26th on the budget. I would like to propose that Shannon, myself, and Elizabeth relook at the bottom two tiers, and also look at the top three tiers and see what we can come back in comparable to what other districts are doing, but also taking into consideration what our families have to, knowing that there's some practices that we would have that we already have in place that are not public, where once we take you in, we're not putting you out for payment. Like, that's not what we do.
And I appreciate what you're doing. I don't want to feel badly against it, but I think it's very demeaning to have to come to someone and say, I can't pay, or to have your bill fall in arrears or that type of thing, when we could just make it free for folks we know can't afford it, you know?
I do, I understand. So I'd like to ask that this be moved to the 26th, and then we will revisit it.
Great. Does the committee wish to vote on the other fees tonight, or should we move everything to the 26th? I'm just getting input. We also have the instrument and the school lunch, school meal. We'll just move everything to the 26th. I do want to say, though, just make a comment on school meal prices. I realize that we're not charging students right now, but we are charging adults. And I see that for many years, we didn't increase the school meal prices at all. We stayed flat at $3.50. I'm generally a fan of like increasing a little bit each year so that you don't have to make a big increase, like increasing the adult lunch price by 43%, which, you know, it's only $3.50 to $5. And but I just still feel like that's a big increase. I don't know, for teachers who are used to buying lunch at school. Do we know like how many ish teachers are buying school lunch? Or maybe that's something that we can, or how much revenue we bring in, or I don't know. That seems like a big increase to me.
Yeah, I can bring that number back
Okay.
when we vote on this.
Great, thank you. So we'll push the vote to March 26th. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. All right. Our next Our next agenda item is discussing the fiscal 26 budget. So I want to start by saying a few things. So first, tonight is the committee's first opportunity to discuss the budget proposal as a committee. Our objective tonight is to discuss the proposed budget and give input to the superintendent so that she can or may use to make changes to the proposed budget. We're not going to vote on it, or it's not my intention for us to vote on it tonight. We have a meeting posted for March 26th, 6 days from now. And at that point, if there are revisions that we ask the superintendent to make, we will plan to view the revised budget then, and the plan is to vote then. So I just want everyone just to sort of level set where we are. According to the Amherst Town Charter, we need to submit our approved budget to the town manager by April 1st. So we're on track to do that if we vote on March 26th. Then what happens is the town manager submits his proposed town budget to the town council by May 1st. And it's important to note that the charter indicates that the school component of the budget and all components of the town budget shall be determined by the town manager. So to me, this says that the town manager is permitted by the charter to decide what amount to include for the school district in the town budget. So the budget that we ultimately vote on is like a request or a recommendation, and it's up to the town manager to honor our request or not. Then after the town manager submits his budget to the town council follows their budget process, which includes referring it to the finance committee. Then the finance committee holds a public hearing, and the finance committee makes a recommendation to the town council, and then the town council discusses and votes. And per the charter, the town council needs to approve the town budget by June 30th. Also, per the charter, the town council cannot increase the total amount of the budget or any line item without the town manager's recommendation. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're doing and then what then happens. Any questions about that? Okay, so I guess we will start with the presentation of the proposed budget.
Before Shannon starts, I wanted to jump in and repeat that this is not where we would want to be. And I know that we have been, one of the questions that we have been asked, and we've been back and forth, is on the projection for FY27, especially with FY26 being a bridge year. I need us to again understand that even with the 6th grade move, even though Amherst would be over operationally 2 buildings, they will still be running 3 school programming, because the 6th grade academy is not joining the region. The 6th grade academy will need its own staff and leadership. So the team has committed, we have committed to start to work, to finalize the work that started prior to me coming in around the 6th grade move. We committed to rolling out a communication plan so the community can know step by step what we will be releasing around the 6th grade transition. We were very pleased that it was presented at JCPC what we would need operationally to get the middle school building up and prepared for 6th grade. But I need us to understand that the request to talk about where we would be for FY27, it's realistically, yes, Amherst would have 2 school buildings, the new Fort River and Cracker Farm, but they will have 3 educational programs, Fort River, Cracker Farm, and the 6th grade academy that is placed in the regional building. It is not joining the region. So I would be remiss, and we would be creating a false narrative that we are consolidating down to 2. We are consolidating our operational budget in terms of building facilities, but we're still paying rent to the region. And so our facilities functions may change, but our programming will remain at 3 because we need a leadership team, we need instructors, we need staff, we need supports, we need to support the students who will have IEPs, we need our paraeducators for the 6th grade move. So I say that because just in case anyone in the committee asked about FY27, yay.
Just doing my job.
Yes, I know. And I have from the time I've started, I've not jumped into anything haphazardly. I've tried to be very diligent and focused and intentional on what I say, and I will continue to do so. But we're not going to project out FY27 without clearly working through the plan and making sure we create the correct picture of what it is going to be. And right now I can tell you it will not be just 2 schools. It will actually be 3 because the Amherst 6th grade is not becoming a part of the region. They are being housed in the region, but they will still need their own instructors, their own leadership team, and their own supports, guidance counselors, school adjustment counselors. So we just need to make sure that is very clear. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay. So this is dated wrong because the meeting was changed, but the recent updates that we have to the budget is that Amherst at the last BCG meeting announced a 4% increase for all of the departments instead of just a 3.5% increase, and our insurance projection went down again from 16% to 14.2%, which is about 90,000 in savings. On the next slide, this is our proposed operating budget without any reductions, and it would be 29,475,698 with the original 3.5% increase over FY25. It would be a reduction of 1.5 million. And the next page, I just wanted to include to make sure that we had what these potential reductions were initially listed as, but I don't plan on going through this. I just wanted to make sure it was included in the packet. On the last page, we were asked to list the positions that we would put back first if we received more funding. So I met with all three principals to develop these different tiers and list them out what would come back first. So in tier 1, essentially we're already there. Amherst has said we will get 4%. And so we put back the SE reading teacher first, then the Gen Ed teacher at Wildwood, an SE academic teacher at Fort River, and reinstating some specials to full-time. On the right-hand side, you can see the target reduction, initial reduction at 1.5 million. If we had the 4%, which we do, the new reduction amount is 1.4 million, and we gained 134,000 by that half percentage increase. And then I added in the 90,000 in the health insurance. So the total we have to add back at this point that we know we will have is 224,000. So I know tier 1 doesn't exactly match 224,000, but we use round numbers, and this was our, just putting it together. So tier
Shannon,
2
pause. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is clear that we are currently in tier 1. So because Amherst has voted the 4%, because of the reduction as Shannon listed at the beginning, we are currently where tier 1 is currently in. We're in that phase. So the SC teacher has been restored, the SC reading teacher, the Gen Ed teacher at Wildwood, the SC academic teacher for Fort River, and the reinstatement of some full-time specials teachers per school, totaling 42,000, is currently in place because of what we've learned thus far. What we're talking about next in tier 2 and 3 is if the percentage increases. So Shannon, go ahead. Just wanted to reiterate that.
Yep. And then in tier 2, we put if we received a 5% increase, what would be the next things we would put back? And we would want to reinstate those specials fully to a 1.0 and have absolutely no reductions in specials. We would want to reinstate the psychologist and keep the SLP and not change it to an SLPA, and add back the 2 SE academic teachers from Crocker Farm and Wildwood. So on the right-hand side, I was just keeping a running tally, like I mentioned at the last one that I explained, so I won't really go through that. And then tier 3 is if we received a 6% budget increase, what were the next things? So I really want to say the principals were meticulous to thinking about their schools and putting together what they wanted to see back first. I didn't make these decisions. It was the principals that this is what they said that they needed. So with that, I will turn it over to you all for questions and discussion.
So to be clear, we're at the 4%. If we got the 5%, we would be able to increase our remaining specials to full time, give them back that 1.0, get a psychologist, keep the SLP versus reducing to SLPA. That's not an addition, and I just want to make sure it's not an additional like 4 then 5. This is like, okay, if instead of 4% they gave us 5%, if instead of 5% they gave us 6%. So I want us to just be clear on that so that we understand what scenarios we are posing, and this is the list that we were asked to come up with, and to make sure that it's student-facing positions first. And so that is what, and I want to say thank you to the principals who worked diligently with Shannon and the team on this, between them and the SE, Joanne Smith, just working on the Amherst budget to make sure that they were able to prioritize the positions that return.
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, first question or comment. There's more cuts at the bottom of this page, I believe. Yeah? So those under 4%, 5%, or 6%, am I right in thinking we are still making those cuts?
Yes.
The reductions not within tiers,
Yes.
those still happen.
Yes.
So if miraculously, I mean, it would be a level services budget if we weren't making any cuts. So, okay.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Bridget and Deb now, who submitted a recommendation memo, to talk about their memo. It's on Board Docs. Megan, if you could bring it up, that would be great.
So, Deb and I spent some time looking at the budget, and also, I think, we've spent many, many hours listening to different town meetings and trying to get a sense for what may or may not be realistic in terms of an ask. And what we felt like would be fair to do is to create a compromise between the 7.3% full budget and the 4%, which, let's be honest, even a small increase in this time where there's so much inflation, it leads to a situation where we would have tremendous cuts, and we just couldn't stand behind having tremendous cuts. The way that we looked at it was that we wanted to restore the frontline teachers, because that person's leading a full classroom or full spaces, and we want them to be able to do it. There were a couple of things that really stuck out to us from the testimony of the folks who came forward. One thing in particular was, that the specials programming, we voted those cuts down last year. So to sit with them again just doesn't make any sense. We've said repeatedly as a school committee, these are not cuts we sustain. Secondly, we've heard testimony from our own special education team at the district and from Dr. Z about how the psychological needs of the students are increasing. And so to cut the school psychologists didn't make sense in that sense. Speech and language pathology, I think having someone who can do that, it's this critical age saves us more as the kids get older, because they can really take part in things and then require less special ed services. We were really worried about the classroom sizes that Allison Estes talked about, 24 in second and fourth grade, or no, fifth grade, sorry. And the last thing that struck me was the combination of the building blocks and Ames teacher. Now, I know that those positions have been combined for 2 years, and I'd like to meet the person who wears the cape and is that superhero, because building blocks is for kids with social emotional needs, with emotional challenges, who may, sometimes have outbursts or be strong and need a lot of maybe differentiation from schedule and special exceptions and quiet spaces and this type of thing. And then Ames is for kids on the autism spectrum who need some quiet, some schedule, some routine. It's almost like two entirely, I'm sure there's overlap in skill set, don't get me wrong, but in other essence, there's like two entirely different skill sets needed for two populations of kids who really shouldn't be so much in each other's space because I think each, the rigidity of a kid on the spectrum and the sort of intensity of a kid with some social emotional stuff, they're going to antagonize each other unintentionally, but I think that just creates a really difficult situation. And so that was another one that we felt was really important to return to the budget. So long story short, 5.59 is what we recommend is the budget to this committee. And let Deb speak to it.
Go ahead, Deb.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad Bridget could do that, because I can't say any of that as beautifully and fully and nuanced. You know, to me, that and busing overflow, maybe from Wildwood to Crocker for second graders and fifth graders when we're about to start a new, we're about to merge those two schools together, doesn't make sense. I know that 24 doesn't seem like a lot to my mother's generation, for instance.
Oh, it's a lot to this generation.
Or maybe even a lot to my generation, but it's a
to this
lot. It's a lot to this generation. So for the older members of our elected bodies, listen, look, and learn, because 24 is a classroom that is, again, the person who does that wears a special kind of cape and never pees. So so there's that. And there's the here we are again. And I talked to a teacher yesterday who was where we were here now last year. It's demoralizing. Bridget mentioned this the other day. Year after year after year, these positions are at risk for no better reason than there's nothing else left. When these very hardworking elementary school administrators sat down in groups over how many meetings? 18 meetings?
A lot.
A lot of meetings. And the best thing they could come up with was this. That says a lot to me. It says a lot to you. And I hope to God it says a lot to town council, because that one $50,000 per year piece for this brilliant person who breaks through to students who can't succeed during the in the conventional way of learning to read. If I ran the zoo, it'd be a lot more. And here she was begging for her job. So this needs to change. And we are going to be at UMass. And we are going to be at town council. And we are writing our legislators. We're in all the places. I mean, thank you, public, for your input. I think we've pretty much covered all the bases that we could possibly cover. But I want to say, and I know I'm going on and on, it's your opportunity to take a mental break. I watched Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday. And as I'm leaving for this meeting, my husband's looking at me and this expression on my face, and he's like, good luck. I said, no, it's just an Amherst it's an Amherst School Committee meeting. He's like, you look like you're ready for battle. And I had just reviewed the Finance Committee meeting where Counselor Devlin Gauthier was trying to understand whether there was an ability for the Finance Committee to see its way through to providing some more funding for us this year. And, you know, it's really hard for me because I hate when people take things out of context, and they went on a lot. So, and I took a lot of notes, but all I'm gonna tell you is, the hard answer is no. Finance committee doesn't see a way through. Town manager doesn't see a way through. We are the only town that does equal increases across all departments, and they maintain that this is the only way to have peace in our town. Otherwise, everyone's just fighting over money. And so there, if you go and watch that meeting, way at the end, starting at an hour 10, an hour 15, there's some really, really important things for us to understand about the people in charge of our money and how it is spent. One of them is, quote unquote, fair is a loaded term. They're not talking about, they're talking about equal versus equity versus fair. And the other is, if they do this one time, which they did for the region last year, it's just going to be every year again and again and again. They are not willing to break the golden rule of equal percentages because they believe that it creates peace. So I'm going to quote Counselor Devin Goff. I'm going to quote Anna, and I'm going to say, there are people in this town who are hearing different things than what I'm hearing. And she's hearing what I'm hearing. Because in response to this mythical idea of peace, here's another quote. If you change that dynamic, being equal percentages, every conversation from here to the rest of our lives is going to be really different. They're holding that line hard because if they wiggle on this now, that's going to be the end of it. And I hope that is the end of it, because it doesn't work. And Anna said, I don't think any of us could sit here and say that that's currently not happening. All you have to do is listen to the public forums, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to say, people still aren't hearing you all. That's what I got to say.
Thank you, Bridget and Deb. I'm going to chime in and say I'm in favor of your recommendation of a 5.59% budget. I actually sort of did my own little math and came up with a 5.5% that I was going to bring up, but now I don't need to because you guys have brought up the 5.59%. I think it's a compromise. A compromise I still wish we didn't have to make, but it restores the student-facing positions, which is what everyone wants. Irv.
I guess I'm in favor of the 5.5. Actually, I would rather see us at 6. And the reason for being at 6 is that I think that we need to set that this year at 6 and then sit down with the town and come up with some other rational way of devising this budget so that we're not back here year after year after year with the same thing. Now, granted, even with the 6%, we will be back here next year asking for more money. And we really need to understand why that is. Not only do we need to understand why that is, but the town council and the finance committee needs to understand why that is. And not only understand why it is, but how to, in effect, effectively make an impact on it so it isn't a year after year event. Because I go back years, and every year, at least for the last 5 years, we've been coming back asking for money, not only more money, not only at the Amherst elementary level, but at the regional level. When I look at the budget, there are things that we can control that we need to look at really carefully, and there are things that we can't control, such as transportation, insurance, special education, etc. Those things we can't control, we have to look for others to help us with that. But those things that we can control, we have to look at ourselves to deal with that. That not, when I say ourselves, I mean the schools, i.e. the school committee, and the town council. So And the reason I'm saying 6%, because, because you're going up, a minimal amount from the 5.59 that is being recommended. And we need to do that just to say to the town council, here's where we are right now. We're putting the 6% in. Here's what it means for us this year. And that next year, in order to avoid coming back next year, let's do something different. You, town council, and the school committee, let's do something different. Whatever that different is, we need to figure it out soon after this budget passes.
So that sounds to me like a proposal that we vote a 6% budget. What do we think about that? Bridget and then Sarah.
Well, I'm in favor of a fully funded budget. The question is, I wanted to show that we're trying to have some movement and some understanding. I wanted to speak to a couple small things that came up in the discussion. One is the question of equal versus equitable and the way that that was discussed. One thing that I can tell you right now is equal is not equitable. I sat in meetings for JCPC where they were talking about some other departments replacing 3-year-old vehicles that had not even 100,000 miles on them when we're coming to them with 15-year-old vehicles with 230,000 miles on them. So this system already is not equal. And then it raised another question for me attending that meeting, which is, we have other school buildings. Is it possible that our 6th grade could go to the Southeast Campus, Dr. Z?
The
East Street.
Not
The-
East
the
Street,
former-
the one on the Southeast Camp.
the former where some no.
Okay, so what?
When I first came to the district in July, I walked that building. That building, it's not in restore. It's no.
So one thing that occurred to me that came out of JCPC is we have three buildings in town, still named schools that were funded by our taxpayers with the intention of education. So the Southeast Street School, the North Amherst School, and the last one is East Street School? Or do we give up East? So
I think we also gave up North Amherst because it's parceled into offices. I didn't get to go into that building, but when I went, it was already like there was actually signage off town. We turned it over to the town because town offices are in that building.
Oh, okay.
So
Because it seems to me if a school's built, they probably did an override or something back in the day, or they did something to build it with educational money for educational purposes. And the same thing with the school on Southeast Street. I'm just wondering, can we sell those buildings and start an educational trust fund or do something towards the future of education overall?
So my limited knowledge that I've in my questioning is that, for example, like the Wildwood building.
Oh, yeah, in Wildwood, that would be another
Right.
good one.
So what ends up happening is the school committee ends up turning over the building, would have to turn the building back over to the town or whomever once we are done with the building. I have the agreement with MSBA that I'm trying to read through because I need to make sure that we did not agree to anything when we received the funding for the new Fort River School. And that us keeping the Wildwood building was like, us giving up the Wildwood building was not a part of us receiving funding. And so that's kind of the understanding that I have, but I'm still going through that contract to determine that. I think Wildwood would need a serious amount of remediation and a lot of upkeep. But I understand what you're asking in terms of current buildings. But the buildings that you're asking about, they were already turned back over prior to me coming in. I don't know if it was this committee or previous committee. I don't know who did that, but those buildings all were turned back over to the town. Except South Amherst. I think we still have control of South Amherst, but it's not in the best. It's not in no condition. The
I'm
middle
just
school is in a better
thinking
condition.
It's in a lovely location, and if we could sell it in Wildwood, and put the money towards schools. I don't know, just an idea.
I don't know if we can. We can put that on our thing and research that, but yeah.
Sarah?
So a few things, working backward. It's my understanding, because I did follow the discussion about turning over the Southeast School, the East Street School, that the school district, we're part of Amherst. We do not own the property. I'm not even sure we own the buildings. So it's basically for our use, and if we don't want to use them anymore, they just revert to the town. So I doubt there's, it would be wonderful if we could sell them, but I don't in fact think we own them. So I want to just make sure I understand your memo.
So
I
I just learned
yeah.
we don't own them.
Yeah, we don't own them, so we can't sell them. So for your memo, I just want to make sure where it differs. So between what it adds to tier 2 is the 2 positions from tier 3, the building blocks, Ames, and the 5th grade. Is that right? That's the only, okay, thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Z. Can you address the issue of paras being in non-compliance with requirements for students who need a one-on-one para? Can you address that topic?
Yes. So one of the issues is when a child's IEP is written, the IEP team comes together and determines what specific supports that child is going to need to be successful in their academic career for the time of the IEP. A lot of our students require one-to-one support. The part that I think that we have charged, or I've charged the SC team with doing, is reviewing, because there was a paraprofessional study, paraeducator study that was done previously on the district. We know there's a lot of movement nationally around, is one-to-one paraeducator supports needed for all students? I just know that I would like us to provide our students what they need. Specifically, if a child's IEP requires that they need one-to-one paraprofessional support, paraeducator support, they need a one-to-one person with them. First thing I would ask is, does it specify what subject area? Does it specify how long? Does it specify full day? Can we put that this is me, because I am not writing every IEP for every student. In each building, in each program, it is different. There are students who may need a paraeducator one-to-one for mathematics versus someone who may need one-to-one support for reading. What the school team would have to do is then create like a paraeducator schedule. However, there are students who need paraeducator support for the full time, from the time they enter school to the time they leave school. That will cause a scheduling conflict. Or may cause a scheduling conflict. I think that as the school leaders walk through what was needed, as they worked with the SE to determine what was needed, they tried their best, and we tried our best to ensure that we can stay within compliance. What we can't project is students who come into our district. We can't project the students who are currently in pipeline for being in the, and I say pipeline because for lack of a better word at this moment, but the students who are currently in the assessment process and whose IEPs have not been written. So even though we are writing this budget currently on our current student needs, what we cannot project is our future student needs at the start of the school year. Because one, we're a public entity, so we accept our students who come in. If a student comes in and they need that one-to-one support, and honestly, I have an email in my inbox right now from our SC administrator, myself, her, Shannon. We have a discussion because we have some students who came in and who need intensive needs, and our budget can't support it. So realistically, we may end up in non-compliance. What we often do is we have a contingency in the budget for a just in case. This year, before the end of the first, I'm going to be very honest, before the end of the first quarter, we had already expended our contingency because of the number of the students who moved in who required additional support and needs. So we ended up stretching to where we were even looking at certain positions to see if we can reclassify those positions to meet the needs of students. So it is not the, and again, I said, this is not the best situation that I would like to be faced with or we would like to be faced with. What we may end up having to do next year is if we have a vacancy, look at that vacancy and base that vacancy against a student's needs and say, we may have a vacancy posted right now for a I'm gonna just say second grade because this is elementary district, a second grade teacher, but we have a student that came into the district with severe needs that needs one-to-one support. We would have to pull down that second grade teacher position and repost for a paraeducator position because that child needs one-to-one support. That's the type of decisions that we would have to make once the budget's passed.
Got it. Thank you. Deb?
So if we didn't reduce the paraeducator positions, would we then face that sort of scenario where we would have to switch out a posted teaching position for a paraeducator position?
We can still face that scenario, even if you, I want to be very realistic.
Yeah.
Ideally, what should be happening is that I should be receiving the 27 million to have the full district funded. And then everybody that has their job now keep their jobs. And then we receive an additional little cushion for when students come into the district. That's the ideal scenario. That's a scenario I would like to walk into and be faced with. Like, all positions should be funded. That's not the scenario that we are in. Yeah. What you are asking me to say right now publicly is, if you switch to a paraeducator versus a reading teacher, where's the value in one versus the other? And I can honestly say they are both valuable to the education of our children. So I am going to trust the leadership and the suggestions that they have made. I know that we will have to be creative. And I also ask for the grace of this committee that if you agreed we're going to restore these positions, but if there is a vacancy, we may have to reclassify that vacancy to meet the needs that we are faced with in front of us at the time, because we do not have the funding to continue to cut and not meet the needs of our students.
Sarah?
Not a question, just my own little small rant that this is just an intolerable situation to have every year. It's asking, I mean, let alone what we have to decide, the poor building administrators and leaders and teachers who have to sit down and figure out which of our students shall we hurt. Choose some. We're going to hurt these kids next year because we don't have money. I mean, it's just unconscionable. It's terrible. Which your children do you want to give up?
I agreed. This weekend I got, and I put it right here to remind me, this weekend I got to attend the 48th Annual Junior Festival concert at the Minnechaug Regional High School. And one of our students from Crocker Farm was able to play in the concert band, like from an elementary school. And that is because of the work of our band and our orchestra instructors that take the time to put forth this work. We had about, I'm going to say approximately 17 to 19 students that represented Amherst and Amherst Regional. And so this is talent, this is gift, but children come to school to learn. They come to school to build interests. And we have programming, we have teachers, we have paraeducators, we have staff, office staff, we have custodians that dedicate each and every day to our children. And so this is not the situation that I would like to be in. I received the numbers, I project the numbers back, but I will say that I can speak on behalf of the entire leadership team when I said that this has been a very hard and traumatic experience on them, more so because this is not their first rodeo in this seat. This is mine's with them. But they have been here, and I know they are tired of being here. So I would respectfully like for us to, yes, we're going to pass this, and we're going to have to battle this out. On Monday, I have to go and meet, and then we'll probably have to call meetings for the region. And I do this for 3 districts, and I get it. but we need to get to a place where we are stop putting our staff members who we are supposed to value through wondering if this year is the year that their position is up for discussion. So I agree. I echo what Irv said, that we have to have a deep conversation. I echo what Deb, Bridget, what all of you are saying, Jennifer. But I need us to get to a place, once we get through this budget cycle, we need to get through a place. So we have to paint the correct picture of what we are offering. Why people move to Amherst. People move here, and I have heard repeatedly, I came here because of my children and the education that is being offered here. Because when their children go through our programs, they get recognized and get to play in a Western regional concert, because they get to be awesome at sports, because they get to write great articles, because they speak eloquently and clearly from kindergarten up until 6th grade. This is why people move to Amherst, even for our pre-K program. We have gifted, talented, and exceptional educators, and they are led by dynamic leaders. And for me, I'm through this, and I've been holding it together for months. But I know that this has been very gut-wrenching on our leaders and our leadership, and it is, I would like for us not to have to be here again. And so that's why I started this presentation off by saying, let's stop the narrative that we're going to just have 2 buildings. Let's be very real that it may be 2 buildings that are Amherst funded, but we are still going to have 3 programs and 3 schools to run.
I'm going to call on Irv, and then I'm going to move us to close this conversation and talk about next steps. Irv, and then Deb, and then we're going to close. Irv.
So, again, the reason I am looking at 6% is that I want to set a number for this year so that we can move forward with the least amount of cuts. What I can tell you is that all across the state, there are districts having the same kind of conversations we are. I have a daughter who is in a system, in a school system that has a tax base that is far greater than ours, much more wealthier than ours. But their schools are cutting themselves so much that they're going to cut themselves out of business. They had an override that failed. And when I look at her situation and in that school, in those schools, there is nowhere else to cut. Yet they are being asked to cut. And that is a situation that is, I think, going to be repeated throughout this state, because if the towns do not appropriate more money for the schools, then the schools simply cannot continue to cut. There's only so much room. Here in Amherst, we can say to the town council, the town manager, this is the budget we want for this year. And what we will do when we get this budget for this year of 6% is that we will commit ourselves to sit down with you, the town manager, the town council, the finance committee, etc., go through our budget, look at it, and figure out a way forward so that we don't continue to have to come back here year after year. And that has not occurred because we keep going across, talking to each other at a distance. The town council says, hey, your budget is out of line. We on the school committee said it's really not enough, and that there are inequalities in the budget, or they're not equal. And all of those arguments have merit in one way or another, but it doesn't make any difference. We're still here. So we're here where we are. And the thing is, how do we get out of it? How do we work ourselves out of this in a collaborative manner with the town? We cannot demonize the town and town council or the finance committee or the town manager. What we need to do is to say, hey, look, we want this 6%, and we will commit ourselves to setting down and working out a system where we're not back here next year. Thank you.
Deb.
So just for clarity, because I got these questions from community members. The reinstating the specials includes reinstating orchestra and band.
Yes.
And the central office reductions is 3.4 here, and it's 3.6 in the region, so for a total of 7. And I think it's just easier for us to understand the impact of that when we understand how many individuals are involved, and not everybody watched the regional school committee meeting. So can you give me a recap of what that looks like in terms of people?
Sure. It's not 3 people. That's that much I'm going to say. One of the things that I can talk about is the fact that when individuals left, so for example, we consolidated 2 positions into one, and that resulted in a cost savings. That was in the teaching and learning area. When the facilities director left, we created the director of operations, which allowed us to move a portion of that salary off of appropriations for the operating budget and into the food service revolving fund. That came up to a savings that is equal in that FTE. In the budget office, we absorbed the budget analyst position. We looked at the split in terms of staffing and reduced staff from one district. So for example, central office is divided amongst the 3 districts. So we reduced for some individuals their percentage off of Amherst, and kind of cut their work in terms of Amherst versus cutting their work in the region. One other thing we did so individuals could keep their jobs was, instead of having certain positions be 12-month, so I looked at any position that was newly appropriated onto the budget for this year, for FY25, positions that were newly appropriated that were not budgeted in were reduced down from full year. That resulted in a savings that equaled. So we took all of that and equated that out into what FTEs they are now.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so we're not voting tonight. We're going to discuss and plan to vote on March 26th. We have a proposal for a 5.59%. We have an idea for 6%. Is there anything we want to ask of Dr. Z or Shannon to prepare or for the March 26th meeting, or do we have all the information and details that we need in the existing information, is my question. Sarah.
I just want to be sure that what I think I understand about the 4% budget is true. By restoring the gen ed teacher at Wildwood, we avoid this overcrowding and possibly having to bus students to another school that was mentioned. Is that the case? We were talking about
possibly. It's a stretch, but it's possibly. Wildwood is greatly affected by. Oh,
Allison just popped
yes.
up.
Right, I was
right.
Affected. Right.
And has there been any proposal in any budget to, I don't know, add a teacher? I'm just super concerned about this possibility of having to bus students. They come to Wildwood and then they get on a transfer bus to go to somewhere else, and then we're in the situation that we heard about with Comanantes, where the students are losing half an hour a day in their instruction.
An hour.
I'm sorry?
Hour. About an hour.
Wow. Okay. That's not serving those kids, and so I would really like to avoid that situation as best we can.
So I want go ahead. Okay.
Really quickly, Deb and I took that into consideration, and our budget is designed to not do it, but Allison, of course.
I just want to make sure you understood how we got the 6% figures. Because that 6%, Crocker Farm had in their reductions losing a kindergarten teacher. Mm-hmm. So we talked about it, and we said, well, if we could move that teacher to Wildwood, so we're not adding necessarily, but we're taking Crocker Farms teacher.
Right.
Yeah, so that we can have 3 fifth grades next year.
And I want to add by saying your question about adding a teacher to the budget. We didn't add anything to the budget. We took things away. But this year, even with the reductions and planning, what ended up happening, especially at Wildwood, was that, again, based on the students that moved in, and I have to say, Allison, when I first came in, explained to me the amount of communication that she is in with UMass in terms of projecting out families that may come in, because that's who serve or filter into Wildwood. And I believe halfway through the year, almost through, we had a mass surge, and that's what resulted. So again, our registration is on a rolling basis. We're open all year. We accept students all year. And so I want to make sure that we're clear that even when we restore these, which we have plans in place, it still may require us to shift around, because at one point, I think it was 1 grade level that was needed, and she had to shift to another grade level based on the numbers in terms of the position and the grade level. So I need us to understand that as a public school system, we are always going to need positions.
Right. I just wonder, and this is for another budget, presumably another time, another discussion with UMass. I know they contribute money to support the education of their students. It sounds like transportation, like if they could have, anyway, just to get children directly to a school that has more space than Wildwood, if that's the one they're nearest.
I think once the new school is open, these types of issues are moot, because then it's easier to have things between the new school and Crocker Farm. If you need to have some type of transfer, because you'll still have to have situations where children from the Crocker Farm area have to get to the new school for programs.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Allison. I'm still heading towards closing this discussion. Is there anything else that we would like to ask of Dr. Z or Shannon in preparation for next week's meeting? Dr. Z?
To be clear, we are removing the tiers, and we're going to represent for next week 5.59 and a 6%.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Bridget?
Is it possible to get like an outline or a picture of what it seemed like there was a lot of reorganization at central office, and just like what would that look like and what's involved? Just visual. I'm a visual learner.
I actually think that's on the joint meeting for April 8th. Okay. So that'll be before the next. No, you're talking about for the 26th? No, right? The 26th is for the budget vote.
The budget would impact.
Okay, so you want to? Yes, I can get you.
Yeah,
that.
thanks.
That's fine.
Sarah?
Well, so I'm just thinking about what council may do, because so far the guidance they give to the town manager is 4%. So if he slashes what we vote down to 4%, this tier 1, that's presumably would be the plan.
That's right.
And so even if we don't see this next week, that will still be the 4% plan.
I mean, the town manager can still choose to do that.
Right. But if he only sets the amount of money, we decide what gets done with it. And
that's right.
Yeah.
So what I think we'll do is Shannon and I would change tier 1 to current.
Yeah.
And label that current, because that is the current situation that we are facing and we have knowledge of. And then we will create tier 1 5.59%. And then we already have tier 3 of the 6%. So the only thing I think we need to go back and do is adjust the numbers, work with the leadership as to around how much 5.59 would be, what those positions would be, and put those positions clearly in and represent for the 26th. And then present a more detailed picture of the central office for the 26th as well.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to move us to our last agenda item, which is future agenda planning. Does anyone have any requests for future agendas? Sarah?
Yeah, but not for next week. I assume next week is just the budget and the
Yes.
fees?
Yep, future is future.
All right, sometime in the future. Someone mentioned welcoming schools earlier. I'd love to hear an update on how that is being rolled out in the elementary schools.
Great.
So.
Anything else? Okay, I'm going to play the 5 voicemails. If members of the public would like to stay and listen to them, that you're welcome to do so. If you do decide to leave, I'm going to ask you to keep the conversation to a minimum so that the school committee members can hear the voicemails. And if you need to have a conversation, I'd ask that you go outside. Here we go. Here's the first one.
Hi, my name is Laura Yvonne Seidman, and I'm the art teacher at Wildwood Elementary School. And I'm just calling to remind. Hello. I had a student at the middle school and high school who both attended Fort River. I wish I could be there today, but I'm at a middle school band concert. I would like to ask the school committee if they were happy with how the superintendent handled the bullying and threatening behaviors that teachers, administrators, and parents were subject to at Fort River. I think the bad behavior of one family has been allowed to negatively impact too many people over too long a time. If you are not happy with the superintendent's response, I ask you do something about it. Parents, teachers, and staff deserve a safe and supportive environment free from the threats of harassment, bullying, and fear of retaliation because of their race or religious beliefs. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Betsy, and my wife and I have a child at Fort River Elementary. And we're calling today to voice our concern over the extreme lack of communication between school leadership and the families at Fort River, and a failure by leadership, district leadership, to honor and enact established safety practices and policies. Most important to note today is that there has been a failure to respond to racially motivated violence and threats directed at a Fort River family. That failure allowed the situation to escalate to a verbal assault of another Fort River parent inside the entryway of Fort River School on a school day. And I know that this committee has heard about that event as well. Since these incidents took place, there has been only one very vague and deeply delayed statement from the superintendent, and decisions were made under intimidation that affected our children's education that were not subsequently shared with parents, and temporary restriction of the perpetrator from the community was shared, but at the last possible moment prior to a school-wide evening event with a lack of clarity and transparency that left so many parents feeling in the dark, confused, and made to rely on communication via personal networks. And having to rely on personal networks as an information source creates harm. It feeds distrust and causes further confusion in isolation. A constant question that we're asking ourselves is, what else are they not telling us? This lack of action and intentional lapse in communication is in violation of the Amherst Pelham School District's Responsiveness Initiative in at least 2 ways. One, the district was made aware of acts and threats of violence made in downtown Amherst that was in violation of this policy. An investigation was either not conducted or not communicated with the affected party, and no appropriate response was initiated. An investigation is called for, and as is, communication with the school's staff, parents, and faculty regarding the findings and reparative response. 2, the district did not take reasonable steps to protect employees, students, and visitors from potential violence, even though it had notice from a reliable source that violence and threats of violence had already occurred on and off campus. Immediate action to prevent further harm was not taken. We need to know that the district is taking this threat seriously and is learning how to better handle any further threats for the safety of our school community, our children, our staff, our hardworking teachers, everyone. So thank you so much for your time and for allowing me to make this statement. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Gage, and I work at Fort River Elementary School. I would like to read our violence in the workplace policy. The district prohibits violent acts, harassment, intimidation, threats, assaults, or similar behaviors on district properties. Where appropriate, the district will take action related to threats or acts of violence that occur off company premises. Forms of violence include physical shoving, inappropriate touching, hitting, destruction of property, sabotage, stalking, or homicide, verbal threats, inappropriate remarks, threats of destruction of personal or district property, visual threatening or abusive body gestures, written notes, letters, cartoons, graffiti, digital or social media, sexual harassment, creating a sexually threatening environment as defined in policy GBAA. Even without an actual threat, employees should immediately report any behavior they have witnessed that they regard as threatening or violent when that behavior is job-related or might be carried out on a district-controlled site or is connected to district employment. Employees are expected, but not mandated, to make this report regardless of the relationship between the individual who initiated the threat or threatening behavior and the person or persons who were threatened or who were the focus of the threatening behavior. If the employee supervisor is not available, the employee should report the threat to another supervisor or another member of the leadership team. Any such report will be recorded and investigated as appropriate. Finally, any person who makes substantial threats, exhibits threatening behavior, or engages in violent acts on district property will immediately be removed from the premises and will not be allowed on district premises pending the outcome of an investigation. In the event that an investigation shows that this policy has been violated, the district will take appropriate action, which may include, but is not limited to, suspension and/or termination of any business relationship, reassignment of job duties, suspension or termination of employment, and/or criminal prosecution of the person involved. Thank you. Goodbye.
Last one.
Hello. My name is Molly Millay. I work at Fort River Elementary School. On February 11th, a Fort River parent brought to your attention a serious incident that took place the previous day at Fort River School. Two parents visually threatened her and engaged in verbal and physical assault, all witnessed by students and staff. While the Fort River administrators urgently requested support from the district, the policies outlined in your Violence in the Workplace document were not fully implemented until a month later. This delay is unacceptable. Our dedicated administrator, committed to ensuring the safety of staff and students, faced pushback from the central office and is now on leave for the remainder of the school year. We demand to know why our parents, guardians, students, and staff were put at risk and why it took so long for a response. Why were necessary support systems not put in place to keep our students and staff safe? Furthermore, since the start of this school year, we have lost 2 administrators. These individuals are not merely administrators. They are integral members of our community. Their absences directly impact our students, staff, and families, jeopardizing our students' academic success. This situation is unacceptable. We need to understand why this is happening in our school and demand to see a real commitment to our students' well-being and success. This letter has been signed off on by 96% of the Fort River staff. Thank you.
All right. I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Irv? I vote
It's
yes.
already
Deb?
adjourned.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Irv, are you there? Well, that's a majority.